Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the final installment for a good long while of the Mythical Tier List videos. What's going on, guys? It's Corrodor here, keeping it tanky in Raid Shadow Legends, and we are going to start it off with Felris's first mythical and one of the most recently updated mythicals, the Calamitus. He's a spirit affinity attack mythical of the undead faction. And honestly, before the buff, I thought he was kind of middle of the road. But after the fact, I think he's definitely solid, specifically for clan bosses. Everything in this guy's kit has extra 20% chance to crit. So you only have to build him with 80% crit rate. So he attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit restores his champion's destroyed max HP equal to the damage inflicted, and then each hit also heals this champion by 30% of the damage inflicted. Grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy. On the A2, he attacks one enemy 4 times. The first hit will ignore 10% of the target's defense. Each subsequent hit will ignore an additional 5%. So the last hit will be ignoring 25%. The first hit places a block buffs. The second places decreased defense, the third places weaken, and the fourth places decreased speed, all for 2 turns. On the A3, attacks all enemies. This attack is always critical and will ignore 20% of each enemy's defense. If this attack kills an enemy, places an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn. If this attack kills 2 or more enemies, places an unkillable on this champion for 2 turns instead. On the passive, at the start of this champion's turn, places a shield buff equal to 50% of this champion's max HP for 1 turn. Also places increased attack on this champion for 1 turn. He's got attack in all battles by 35%. This form is really strong for single target bosses, i.e. Demon Lord and Chimera specifically. You can do a lot of trials effectively just with this first form on Calamitus. Then we swap over to the second form, and we've got the wave-based form as well as the Hydra form. Hold up, click the link in the description right now to get a free Uugo as well as 2 more free epic champions as you level up. Here are the steps to get yours. Step 1, log out of Plarium Play on PC and uninstall. Step 2, click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Step 3, launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Step 4, go to your inbox and claim your first champ. This is an amazing account start to Raid, so click the link and start now. On the A1, attacks one enemy. After attacking, transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target. If the target is under a hex debuff before the attack, transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target before attacking instead. On the A2, attacks all enemies. Before attacking, removes all debuffs from this champion. Will ignore 20% of each enemy's defense. Will ignore 35% instead. If they are under hex, damage increases by 10% for each debuff on each target. On the A3, attacks all enemies. On the A3, attacks all enemies. Before attacking, places hex and decreased defense for 2 turns. Will ignore life barrier, poison cloud, and ally protection. And then on the passive, whenever this champion attacks an enemy under hex, heals this champion by 30% of the damage inflicted. Also increases this champion's attack by 20% for each enemy under hex. Again, before the buff, this champion was already pretty good, but after his buff, I think he's become arguably a force to be reckoned with for clan bosses. And that is why I will be giving the Calamitus a middle-of-the-road flashy. I will give him, I'll give him behind Geralt. I think Geralt is better just because she's more versatile, but Calamitus is definitely no longer a mythical to sneeze at. The only reason I hope I don't get him as my first is because that was Felris's first, and I'd like to have some diversity. Moving on to aesthetically my favorite mythical in the entire game, Toshiro the Bloody. Fantastic damage dealer, and aesthetically this guy looks amazing. I love this champion. If he's my first mythical, I'm going to jump up and down screaming like a kid on Christmas. On the A1, he attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of attacking another enemy if they are under a leech. Also places a perfect veil on this champion for one turn. His damage is based on attack and HP. The attack is the better base stat, so you are better off trying to stack attack on him. On the A2, he attacks 4 times at random. Each hit increases this champion's attack and HP by 5% while in their base form. If the target is under a leech, this increases by 10% instead. Damage inflicted by this skill increases by 15% for each leech debuff on the enemy team. So in Hydra or Arena, that is going to go up by 60%. On the A3, attacks all enemies, places drop defense and leech for 2 turns, places an extra hit on enemies under 2 or more debuffs. And then on the passive, fills this champion's turn meter by 5% every time they attack a target under leech. Also inflicts 25% more damage to enemies under a leech debuff. He is incredibly strong, and because he does leech, he's also very sustainable because of the amount of damage he's doing to leech targets. But if that's not enough and you need healing as well for the rest of the team, he also has HP in all battles by 35%. But if you need healing for the rest of the team, you swap over to Form 2, which looks utterly sick, and you then prioritize HP over attack. And he then has a AoE A1 that has a 50% chance, an AoE A1 that has a 50% chance of increasing the duration of all enemy debuffs by 1 turn. On the A2, attacks all enemies, heals all allies except this champion by 5%, heals all allies except this champion by 10% of the damage inflicted. The value of the heal increases by 5% for each leech debuff on the enemy team. And then on the A3, attacks all enemies, places decreased speed and leech for 2 turns, then grants an extra turn. And on the passive, doubles the amount of healing this champion receives when attacking enemies under leech. Also decreases the damage taken from enemies under leech by 50%. So he is far more sustainable and tanky in this form. However, I have heard that the damage on this form is incredibly lackluster in comparison. Toshiro is an incredible damage dealer. I would love to have him. Again, aesthetically, he is my favorite mythical in the entire game. However, I'm going to try to look past that. And just as far as his kit is concerned, for my account, I believe that Toshiro the Bloody is a solid tasty. I believe he is just above nice because he can be used in PvP. I've seen it done. People are going to call me nuts, but I've seen it done, and I've seen it done effectively. And I've also seen, he's arguably one of the best damage dealers in Hydra Clan Boss. So he's more versatile than nice. For that reason, I put him above him, and I think he is just absolutely incredible. Now, on to the third quote-unquote free mythical, and until Hard Faction Wars, the only other free mythical in the game, Embrys the Anomaly. You get this champion by collecting his fragments in Chimera, and he is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Very few people have him, but the reviews say that he's pretty doggone solid. But let's look at his kit together. He's got an AoE A1, destroys each target's max HP by 3%, stacks up to 30%. Also increases the duration of one random debuff on all enemies by 1 turn. This effect cannot be resisted if enemies have any necrosis stacks. Necrosis is not very strong, in my opinion, unless it's being used by the Viper form. He does damage based on HP. He's got good base HP. However, I don't think the multipliers are supposed to be very good on this first form. He is very much a support champion on this first form. On the A2, places True Fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn and decrease attack on all enemies for 2 turns. These effects cannot be resisted if enemies have any necrosis stacks, then grants an extra turn. On the A3, attacks all enemies. This is what arguably is going to make this guy a meta level champion in Arena. The Unmaking attacks all enemies, removes any stone skin buffs, and replaces them with True Fear debuffs. Block debuffs will be replaced with block buffs, and then any buffs that positively affect stats will be converted into the debuff counterpart. And strengthens will be converted into weakens, and continuous heals will be converted into heal reduction. Then steals 5% of each target's turn meter for each buff converted into a debuff by this skill. Also decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 20%. Again, these effects cannot be resisted if there are any necrosis stacks. Necrosis stacks occur whenever an enemy is killed. Places one necrosis stack on all other enemies. Necrosis stacks cannot be resisted or blocked. Necrosis stacks can only be removed by reviving dead allies. This effect does not work against bosses and their minions. If there are multiple champions with the skill, only one will activate. At the start and end of this champion's turn, instantly activates any necrosis stacks on all enemies. So actually, I take it all back. Necrosis works very well on Embrys in just about anywhere that outside of a boss fight, because it places it on all. Well, no, I guess it works the same as Viper form. It reads oddly. I guess it works the same as Viper form. It's still very strong though, because it's basically like a poison debuff. It deals damage every time they take a turn, but it also activates twice at the beginning and end of his turn. So you're getting a lot of extra damage. He's got HP in all battles by 35%. Then we swap over to the nuking, HP-based, incredibly cool Cthulhu Executioner Form 2. He's got a single target A1, places an extra hit if the target has any necrosis stacks. Also places block revive if this attack kills an enemy. His damage is based on HP and accuracy. So while you can try to build him without accuracy for his first form, it's still advised that you build him with accuracy in order to increase his multipliers on his secondary form. On the A2, it's an AoE. Deals double damage to enemies whose accuracy is lower than this champion's accuracy. Ignores 50% of each enemy's defense on whose accuracy is equal to or higher than this champion's accuracy. Again, you want to build him with high accuracy because you can also build him with ignore defense. So you not only ignore defense, but you're also dealing double damage. So it's still better to go for high accuracy on this champion. On the A3, swaps HP with an enemy. If the target is a boss, fully restores this champion's destroyed max HP and fully heals this champion instead. Each time this skill is used, increases this champion's ignore defense effects by 10% while in their alternate form. Stacks up to 50%. So it is very easy to get this guy to 100% ignore defense, dealing true damage. Then grants an extra turn. And on the passive effect, whenever this champion dies, reflects damage equal to 50% of the fatal hit back to the attacker, including any surplus damage. And then he also does the necrosis. The active effect on a 5-turn cooldown, if this champion is about to get killed by a fatal hit, preempts that hit and instantly places a revive on death on them for 1 turn before the damage is taken. So not only is he going to be dealing damage when he is killed, but he is also got Godseeker's passive on cheating death. I think this champion is going to be incredibly powerful. I think once enough people get him, he is going to completely change the meta of the game. I give Embrys a tentative tasty above Siegfried. Because yes, Siegfried is a fantastic nuker, but Embrys is going to have incredible control on top of damage. So, yeah, I think Embrys is going to be a total game changer and meta shifter. All right, we've got the 2 newest mythicals left. Up next, we have arguably the new, some would say, the new worst mythical, the Dwarf Fjorod Wolfheart. Honestly, I don't fully agree with people's hatred for this champion. I watched a showcase that Nub did, and I wasn't honestly disappointed. I know he's been getting a lot of hate, but I don't see why. On the A1, he attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a freeze. If the target is not under freeze, we'll repeat the attack once. So this can be a quad hitter A1. Fantastic for Fire Knight hard. On the A2, places block debuffs and increase speed on all allies for 2 turns, then decreases the cooldown of all ally skills except this champion's by 1 turn. That is a very solid skill. Very good for getting back around to important cooldowns, as well as providing very good buffs for your team. And then on the A3, attacks all enemies, places a freeze on all enemies for 1 turn, and decrease speed for 2. If an enemy is from the Galen Pact, which is lizards, skinwalkers, orcs, and Ogren, I believe, places the freeze for 2 turns instead, then grants an extra turn. And then on the passive, whenever this champion receives a debuff from an enemy, has a 30% chance of placing freeze on that enemy for 1 turn. Occurs once per turn. This chance increases to 100% if the target is from the Galen Pact. He's like the reverse version of Tormund, which means he's going to be annoying as all get out. And then he's got accuracy in all battles by 80. He's got pretty good base stats. His speed's a little low, but then he goes from being a support champion over to an HP-based nuker. I did not watch far enough into Nub's showcase to know how hard this form hits, but I can only assume based on the stats that I'm seeing that it's pretty good. He's got an A1, attacks one enemy. If this attack kills an enemy, resets the cooldown of one of this champion's skills randomly. He's got AoE A2, places an extra hit on enemies under crowd control debuffs. He's got an AoE A2, places an extra hit on enemies under crowd control debuffs. Each hit decreases each target's max HP by 25% of the damage inflicted, stacks up to 50. Each hit also decreases each target's turn meter by 25%. This effect cannot be resisted if an enemy is under crowd control. On the A3, attacks one enemy, will ignore 50% of the target's defense. If the target is under freeze, will ignore 100% instead. If the target is killed while under freeze, also places block revive. And then on the passive, counterattacks with his A1 whenever an enemy increases the cooldown of any of this champion's skills. That's kind of niche, although with Fabian being in the picture now, that's a lot less niche. But yeah, overall, not a huge fan of this champion. I'm not as hard on him as the other content creators that I've heard from, but I don't think he's great by any means. He reads like a Fire Knight hard champ, and that's not what a mythical should be. I don't believe he hits hard enough to be an arena nuker, so he's could be worse. I think the chicken is still worse, personally, but I can see the argument. Actually, no. Gallius is lonesome no longer. I wouldn't want to dupe of this champion as he is right now. I would not want my mythical to be a one-stop shop. I will put him above Gallius, though, because his first form does have that increased speed and block debuffs for the team. But I would not want him as a dupe at all. And now for the newest mythical in the game, one that I don't see the inherent value of, but I could just be missing something here, and that is Theodosia the Disgraced. She's got great base stats, or she's a support on the first form. A1 attacks one enemy, heals all allies by 5% of this champion's max HP. That part's just like the new login champion coming, Udex. And then also fills this champion's turn meter by 5% per each alive ally, and by an additional 2.5% for each alive enemy. Wow. Good gracious. That's a lot of turn meter. On the A2, fully cleanses all allies, then places Perfect Veil on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, then places Stone Skin on this champion for 1 turn. That is a really powerful protection skill. And then on the A3, revives all dead allies with 50% HP and turn meter and places unkillable on all allies for 2 turns. Finally, on the passive, every 7 turns equalizes the HP of all allies. The HP levels of all allies will be brought to the average HP level of the team. Allies will receive 1% less damage for every 2% of HP lost. Stacks up to 25%. If there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate. She's got speed in all battles by 25%. I think she is a solid support. The fact that she places Stone Skin is really powerful, and it's very unique. And the unkillable on the revive is really good. Yeah, I think she's a very competent support. And then she goes into being a offensive support for the second form. Again, still having great base stat. The attacks one enemy on the A1 destroys the target's speed by 3, stacks up to 30. Decreases the target's turn meter by 5% for each alive ally and additional 2.5 for each alive enemy. This is such a interesting A1. I don't know if this works against bosses. If it does, she's immediately one of the most powerful champions in the entire game, right up there with Rule the Huntsman. On the A2, attacks all enemies before attacking, steals all buffs from all enemies, places block buffs and decreased defense for 2 turns. If an enemy's speed is lower than this champion's, these debuffs will be protected. And then on the A3, places sleep for 1 turn and decreased speed. If an enemy's speed is lower than this champion's, decreased speed will be protected, then decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 25%. Then on the passive, this champion is immune to block active skills, and when allies attack, their damage is increased by 25% of their target's current turn meter. She is a very interesting champion that I don't quite fully understand. I will say, though, I hate sleep. I think sleep is a useless debuff. I wish they would stop making champions with it. I mean, Sand Devil is like its only use case. I think it's horrible. But as far as Theodosia is concerned overall, I think she is potentially one of the most powerful mythicals in the game. I think she could give Galathier a run for his money. In fact, for my account, I think I would actually put her just above Star Sage Galathier. So there you go, guys. That is the final mythical tier list as of right now. After another 3 or 4 mythicals are released, we'll come back with another set, but that's the way things stand as of right now. So what do you guys think of my list? Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you disagree, I want to hear why in the comments. I think it's so interesting hearing other people's perspectives on these champions, especially the people that have them. Because, again, I don't have any mythicals. Although that will soon change because I'm about to fuse my Mikage on the next CVC. So really looking forward to that. Let me know what you guys think. I'm really curious. I tried my best here. From where I stand, this seems like a solid list. If not, please let me know why. And with that being said, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay happy, stay healthy, and stay tanky.